Welcome to Matters Financial and Geopolitical from a Frontier. Trust you had a great weekend. It was very eventful, and I'll tell you about it. We had an absolutely lovely time in the Tsavo, and I'd like to thank Finch Hattons for putting us up. It really is, there's a link to their website. It really is a remarkable spot they've got there, right at the edge of the Tsavo, next to the Chyulu hills. Of course, it's named after Dennis Finch Hatton, and I came across this from Tish Farrell, stone obelisk marking the grave of Dennis Finch Hatton, and it's now surrounded by shambas, but the obelisk is pretty grand. We are going to upload some outstanding footage of so many things. On the first day we got there, which was Friday, we went to Mzima Springs, which supplies most of the water from Mombasa and is based in Tsavo West, and we got there quite late at about 6 p.m. Mzima Springs is a series of 4 natural springs in Tsavo National Park, located in the west of the park, around 48 kilometers from Mtito. The source of the springs is a natural reservoir under the Chyulu hills to the north. The Chyulu range is composed of volcanic lava rock and ash, which is too porous to allow rivers to flow. Instead, rainwater percolates through the rock and may spend 25 years underground before emerging 50 kilometers away at Mzima. The natural filtration process gives rise to Mzima's famously clear stream, which flows through a series of pools and rapids. 2 kilometers downstream from the springs, the stream is blocked by a solidified lava flow and disappears below the surface again. And it's a remarkable place. If you haven't been, it's well worth visiting. And the thing was, we got there at 6. There's a kilometer walk, and we were walking this walk and looking at at the spring itself, and this little underwater viewing point, and then we're coming back to the car park, and suddenly in front of us, practically in the dark, because it's now 10 to 7, were 25 elephants, and we allowed them to cross over, and they crossed over. And then the guard said to us, okay, let's go forward, and the guy who was with us from the hotel said, actually, have you looked on the other side? And there were at least another 20 and probably 50 in the bushes. And what I think was happening was there were 2 sets of elephants coming to drink, and one had got there first, and the second were waiting, and Hannah and I were just transfixed. We hope we've got the footage because it was quite dark. We went up in the Chyulu hills where the springs, the water originates. On the way we met a dead cow, obviously intercepted by a lion. And the lions in the Tsavo are very quiet and hidden because of this human-wildlife conflict, and the Maasai herders in particular who come into the park, and the lions. Look at the photograph of our car, and the Chyulu hills are incredibly green and completely different and cooler landscape. The Tsavo itself is teeming with elephants. You hear the crackling of branches, you see bucket loads of poo everywhere, and then you see them. I took a couple of videos of elephants. This is from Tsavo West, very close to Finch Hattons. In fact, the second night we were there, I fell asleep, and Nisha said to me, Ali Khan, she couldn't sleep a wink. And she said, I didn't want to wake you up, but there were like hundreds of them all around our tent. And then they have this wonderful swimming pool, which has an added frisson of danger, because there's no fence, and it's right at the edge of Tsavo. If you haven't read Daphne Sheldrick, then you must. And she, of course, begun her wildlife's history in the Tsavo. And this was written about her book. Over 60 years ago, Kenya's first generation of pioneer wardens, Bill Woodley, Peter Jenkins, and David Sheldrick, traveled the main Nairobi-Mombasa road to Mtito, then just a dusty dirt road, to begin the daunting task of transforming untouched and largely unexplored and inhospitable and semi-desert wasteland into the famous national park. Tsavo is today. It was in those times an unattractive tangle of dense thicket which was home to thousands of black rhino, unfriendly elephants which had suffered years of hunting and poaching by humans, and lions that always had man-eating tendencies, whilst the buffalo were extremely dangerous when encountered at close quarters. Added to this, Tsavo was home to a multitude of poisonous snakes, scorpions, and other stinging insects, bird-eating spiders that leapt up at one if disturbed, not to mention the ever-present threat of deadly malaria. And it is an extraordinary place. A few early European explorers ventured through Tsavo and the Taru Desert on their quest to reach the hinterland. Men such as the German missionaries Krapf and Rebmann, who were the first white men to see the snows of Kilimanjaro and Mount Kenya in the early 1800s. Lord Lugard walked up the Sabaki Gilani River and had his finger bitten by a crocodile at what is now Lugard Falls. So really it was an extraordinary visit, and it took me back to that comment in On the Road. Sal, we've got to go and never stop going till we get there. Where are we going, man? I don't know, but we've got to go. Hannah and I, of course, had to go. Put up a photograph of the two of us in the Chyulu. On the Road is now 60. That was Joe Kerouac's drug-infused prose, became a classic of 20th century literature. All I really knew was that On the Road absorbed me completely. It was like nothing I'd read before. It didn't follow any traditional structure of fiction that I'd encountered previously. The language was lyrical and urgent and demanded to be read out loud. Under my breath to appreciate the rhythm, it was poetry and prose all mixed together that bounced along to a head-nodding, foot-tapping cadence. And it was a fantastic book. Gonzo Art number 73. I like this as I like Hunter S. Thompson. It's mainline adrenaline out there on the edge where you can't make the slightest mistake. Sea Creative for the One Urban World in Cartagena, Italy, 2016 caught my attention. We're hardly one world these days, are we? Political Reflections, the tribute in light rises above the lower Manhattan skyline as a visual reminder of how the Twin Towers once stood above the city skyline. Aung San Suu Kyi, the myth turns to dust. This is an article by Lowry Institute. For much of her career, Aung San Suu Kyi has been less a real person than a character in a film script, one with the crudely redemptive arc of a Hollywood blockbuster. The story goes something like this. The beautiful daughter of an assassinated national hero opposes a gang of tyrannical generals who had driven a beautiful land into poverty and stagnation. Despite being cruelly condemned to house arrest, she becomes a world-famous tribune of democratic values, is garlanded by the Nobel Committee, and inspires a boycott campaign that casts Myanmar out of civilized international company. Eventually, the generals bow to the popular will and announce elections, with Suu Kyi's National League for Democracy wins in an avalanche. The lady takes her rightful place as Myanmar's leader, and her people live happily ever after. To be sure, there are few who really believed things would play out quite so neatly in a nation with such a troubled past. Even so, it is remarkable to note just how far Suu Kyi's global standing has fallen since she took office as Myanmar's de facto leader in April 2016. The catalyst has been her unconscionable silence about the terrifying ethnic cleansing now unfolding against the Muslim Rohingyas minority in Rakhine State in western Myanmar. The Dalai Lama says Buddha would have helped Myanmar's Muslims. That's my conclusion. Here, Pakistan Air Force aircraft arrives at a Chinese airport to participate in Shaheen 6 joint training exercises. And I go back to that article I wrote about China, and I was saying that China has advanced its footprint in Pakistan by leasing the Gwadar port. And I was talking about the moment when there was a standoff on the plateau, and I said Xi Jinping is goading Narendra Modi, who would be seriously advised to take on the Chinaman in the remote plateau. But, he's essentially got India surrounded. I'm not scared of the hurricane anymore. I'm scared of the tornadoes. Have a look at some of these shots of the impact of the hurricane in Cuba coming from the freelancer Yamil Lage via AFP and Getty Images. And this goes back to something I wrote in November 2015. I cannot help feeling we are like frogs in boiling water. We have created massive interference in the cosmic fine-tuning phenomenon, and what we're seeing is practically biblical. And those folks who continue to deny it are always going to deny it until, I suppose, this happens to them. Webcam in Key West caught a man wiped out by a giant wave while snapping a photo as Hurricane Irma approached despite orders to evacuate. Luati Berayo, who is an interesting fellow in Angola, posted this image. Bannon firing Comey was the biggest mistake in modern political history. Steve Bannon said the firing of FBI Director James Comey may have been the biggest mistake in modern political history. He opposed President Trump's decision to oust Comey. FBI is an institution. I don't believe that the institutional logic of the FBI, particularly in regards to an investigation, could possibly be changed by changing the head of it. I agree with him. Another quote, Trump's predecessors left him Vietnam in Afghanistan, the Cuban Missile Crisis in North Korea, and the Bay of Pigs in Venezuela. Have a look at this photograph, Chuck Schumer and Donald Trump in the Oval Office after negotiating a debt ceiling deal. And he's really wrong-footed everybody, including his own party. The first white president is what The Atlantic calls Donald Trump. The foundation of Donald Trump's presidency is the negation of Barack Obama's legacy. According to pre-election polling, if you tallied only white voters, Trump would have defeated Clinton 389 to 81 in the Electoral College. That's an interesting statistic. Alec Baldwin has a wonderful video of Trump's Phoenix rally. International markets, the euro was up sharply. It's now at 120.16, well above 120. US 10-year yields have dropped sharply. Take a look at this from Jamie at Reuters. Let's have a quick look at the currency markets where the dollar's trying to fight back a little bit today. Euro dollar 120.16, dollar index 91.50. The Japanese yen 108.49. Swiss franc 0.9504, the pound, which has really ratcheted higher, now at 131.94, and that's been a big move. The Australian dollar 0.8046, Indian rupee 63.865, South Korean won 1131.80, Brazilian real 30877, Egyptian pound 17.6473, and the South African rand 1293.51. Dollar index, this is a chart from Triple Leverage. It's a Trump apocalypse. We're now at 91.50. Goldman Sachs on the euro dollar. This is a chart they provided by Gian Claudio Torlizzi. Where are we? 120.16 last. Bond yields compared with the euro. This is from Holger. And dollar yen from NASA Investing. We're at 108.51. I thought that Bank of Japan were going to be far more aggressive about trying to drive it up to 112. I think they can't, and I think that's what we've seen unfold in the last few sessions. Therefore, we're going to go probably back down to the 100 mark. Gold, now that got as high as 1350, we're now at 1337. It's feeling a bit tired. WTI crude oil, last trading New York crude oil at $48.15. My view is that it's, there's a very bullish view out there in the market looking for 60, but I tend to disagree with that. Have a look at this turbocharged tungsten. That's via Bloomberg. Rosé is getting so big it could move into beer's territory. Interesting article. Emerging market bond yields are at their lowest since 2013. These are salad days for bond issuers in the more risky economies in the world. South Africa is looking to issue a dollar bond. Turkey completed a $1.75 billion tap. Ukraine is said to be planning a return to international capital markets for the first time since it restructured debt in 2015. Tajikistan, which has never sold Eurobonds, is also lining up an offering. Would be in an ideal moment for Kenya to issue if we had more clarity on the government. Total market capitalization of the South African bourse was $489 billion as of Friday, $25 billion more than Riyadh's. I like this from Johannesburg IYP, a city captured by Biantanvea. Explore Johannesburg. South African all shares up 10.01% this year. The Bell-Pottinger ruling has muted wedding bells for the main principal, according to Times Live. Dollar Rand, 12.9351. I'm expecting the Rand actually to strengthen from here. Egyptian Pound, 17.6473. Nigerian all shares up 33.78% year to date. Ghana has tripled the minimum capital requirements for banks. As part of reforms to strengthen the industry, lenders will need to set aside 400 million cedis, $91 million in capital, compared to 120 million cedis previously. The Ghana Stock Exchange fell 2.8% on Friday, the most since records began in 2011, to pair a 41% rally this year that drove the gauge to a record high only 2 days earlier. The Ghana Stock Exchange, as of Monday, is up 40.58% in 2017. The US Treasury is targeting South Sudanese government officials and related companies for continued destabilization. OFAC designates 3 individuals and 3 related companies for destabilizing activities. Malek Ruben Riak Rengu, Deputy Chief of Defense Force and Inspector General of the Sudan People's Liberation Army, Michael Makwei Lueth, South Sudanese Minister of Information and Broadcasting, Paul Malong Awan, former South Sudanese Chief of General Staff of the SPLA. So the heart of Salva Kiir's administration. China is to loan Guinea $20 billion in exchange for minerals. They tried that in the DRC a few years ago, you might recall. Magufuli wants soul-searching over corrupt mining deals, has called for national soul-searching after 2 parliamentary reports reveal large-scale corruption in the country's mining industry. The President ordered immediate legal action against the officials who have been implicated and say they should resign. He said, if we have to start over, let's do that. And if so much more minerals have been stolen, then let's shut the mines down. Maybe our children and grandchildren will be smarter and they'll come to do this job rather than just letting these minerals be taken away. He then said he was to nationalize a diamond consignment seized from Petra Diamonds, whose value was put at $29.5 million. Diamonds were seized at the main airport in Tanzania's Dar es Salaam. Government first confirmed the confiscation on Thursday, saying that the entry was that they were worth $14.798 million, but the real value was $29.5 million. Among the legal action to be taken include the nationalization of all the diamonds seized after it was published that there was cheating involved in declaring the actual revenue last year. Magufuli on Thursday ordered a review of Petra Diamonds' contract and asked senior public officials to resign over the outcome of an investigation into the mining sector. One minister and a deputy minister quit their posts as requested, state-run television reported. The president's actions are a continuation of a crackdown in a mining sector that accounts for about 4% of Tanzania's GDP. Look, I wrote about this before, and, we could be in a situation where there has been enormous malfeasance. I would have thought that some of these companies like Petra Diamonds and others would not have cared to run that risk of getting caught. So, so it's a question, is it an overzealous president? which is the way I incline, or is it real? And I suppose we're going to find out. Kenya election campaigns turn personal after court orders fresh polls. The president calls the chief justice a cheat. A lawmaker denounces the head of the opposition as the devil and says he needs a whipping. The opposition leader accuses the president of making a public speech while drunk. The gloves are off as Kenya's ruling party and the opposition battle for votes ahead of new elections, tentatively scheduled for October the 17th by the Supreme Court after it voided last month's presidential results. Last Friday's historic decision, the first of its kind in Africa, was welcomed by many as a rare sign of independence from Kenya's judiciary. It means voters will again have to choose between President Kenyatta and veteran opposition Odinga 72. After the verdict by the Supreme Court, I'm worried about the upsurge of hate discussion amongst Kenyans. This is Francis Ole Kaparo, who's head of the National Cohesion and Integration Commission. And then talking about these sorts of quotes. Raila is a demon, he needs to be whipped by a man and whipped by a woman. Support us, including all parliamentarians, so we can hold him, Korea told the cheering crowd. We went and gave birth to a baby. The election, the baby did not die during pregnancy or during delivery. The baby had started to suckle. Raila then came, stuck his finger in the baby's arse and killed it. SAPC, the spokesman for the president, used the term wakora, this was posted on YouTube, to criticize a judgment he views as subverting democracy. Anything that doesn't express the will of the people is wakora, SAPC said. It was irresponsible for the president to address the nation when he appeared to have taken one too many, Raila Odinga said. I think it is an insult to the nation. Asked about that comment, presidential spokesman SAPC said, we don't comment on rubbish. I think that linguistic deconfliction is required rather urgently. The next trial of strength is Africa Confidential. The political class faces a severe test of its democratic credentials following the Supreme Court's judgment on the election, saying that the elections, if the elections are held on an unrealistic timetable without consulting the widest range of politicians and activists, celebrants of the Supreme Court judgment could be cruelly disappointed and judges could quickly lose popular confidence. Next battles will be at the IEBC. Chairman Wafula Chebukati insists that one of the officials on NASA's hit list will be fired, but added that illegalities are proof that these IEBC officials concerned will face trial. NASA is threatening mass protests if its demands aren't met. Now, a lot of reference is made to this memo, which was sent by Kenya's Electoral Commission chairman to its CEO and demanded answers as to what went wrong with the election. Samira posted that. I go back to the court decision on the 4th of September. The IEBC failed, neglected, or refused to conduct the presidential election in a manner consistent with the dictates of the Constitution. And I said then, given the damning nature of the verdict with respect to the IEBC, it's unclear to me how the 60-day deadline is met. Ezra Chiloba, James Mohato, and 4 others moved to court to stop the IEBC from suspending or interfering with their employment. So it's an IEBC at war with itself. And Chebukati tweeted this: rumors regarding my so-called night meetings with NASA are baseless and reckless. He's been accused of meeting the opposition at night. French company rejects Kenyan opposition claims on vote system. French digital security company OT Morpho denied its systems used in Kenya's annulled elections last month were tampered with. So we got plenty of moving parts. I'm just not sure how this election is held, under what auspices, and how it plays out from here, but you can see where the battle lines are now drawn. Billy Kahara, who was quoted by Kwani Trust, said about Westgate Mall, Kenya has developed a pathology of not only trying to forget, but to obscure memory, which I thought was a powerful statement. Remittances are Kenya's largest source of foreign exchange ahead of tea, horticulture and tourism, the monetization of intellectual capital. Kenya shilling is back below 103 at 102.795. That's a year high. Nairobi, all shares up 24.23% year to date and rallied 1.01% on Friday, rebounding from that close enough to 6% sell-off in the two sessions after the Supreme Court decision. NSE 20, that was up 0.91%, and that's up 20.52% year to date. Long on Kenya reported full-year profit after tax increased 28.649%. Revenue was down 3.441%. Distribution costs down 12.798%. Admin expenses down 12.318%. Finance costs were up sharply 110%. Profit before tax was up 28.62%. Earnings per share, however, was down, and that's because of the rights issue that they had. So the earnings per share down 25.758%. Now, very interesting commentary. Turnover dropped marginally by 3% due to a reduction in volume sold in Kenya. Sales from Uganda, Tanzania, Malawi, Zambia, Rwanda, Senegal contributed 30% of group turnover from 20% in the previous year. Talking about good, strong cash generation, 244 million. Excited by the growth of the sale of digital products, paying a full-year dividend of 29 cents a share, plus an interim of 9 cents a share, targeting more African expansion. These were good results. And price-earnings ratio trailing 10.816, probably a little bit worth having a little nibble. Nakumatt has shut an outlet 9 months after opening it. This is the next gen store on the Mombasa Road. And the Competition Authority of Kenya has approved the acquisition of 56.2% of the Kenyan hospital chain Avenue Group by Abraj. We really are on the buy side these days. Once again, I wish you a great week. Thanks for stopping by.